the Bitcoin standard, right? And they're pissed off, and they know that they're not going to get any Social Security, and they know that the boomers have screwed them, and they know that they can't afford a house because there's too much inflation, and they're aware of just how screwed up this system is, and so they are now fighting to get rid of, the broken monetary system, the broken politicians, the corruption, all of it. And that's going to grow. That's going to grow, Michelle. And so,
guys, this is why we are so bullish on the long-term potential of Bitcoin. This generation, the millennials, the Gen Zs, we understand how messed up everything is in our society today. Once people start to understand what Bitcoin is and how it can help with a lot of these problems, we'll start to see that reflected in the price of Bitcoin even more in the future, because people are starting to look for a way to opt out from all the corruption. Crypto family, welcome back to the channel. Aaron here, coming back at you with another video today. We have a good one for you guys here today. Lawrence Leopard talking about what the Federal Reserve has been doing, raising interest rates, what he thinks is going to happen with inflation, and what are ways to opt out from that. What can you do to get ahead of this inflation situation? So he makes some pretty good points in today's video. I wanted you guys to check it out. Leave your thoughts in the comment section below. If you found any value, make sure to hit that like button. Let's go ahead and jump into it here today. Let's hear what he has to say.
amazing. There's a clip out of Jerome Powell saying the day before Silicon Valley Bank collapsed, he was testifying Humphrey Hawkins in front of Congress, and he said the banking system is sound. And a day later, an enormous regional bank, second largest ever bank failure in the United States with Silicon Valley Bank. We're down the road, right? And we don't know the exact slope of the curve, and we don't know the timing. I'm very comfortable saying the dollar will effectively be restructured or have lost most of its value within 10 years. And I think, frankly, it could even be shorter than that. My kind of median guess is about 5 years. And I base that looking at history and other currency events in other countries and kind of watching the patterns and how long it takes. And since you and I last spoke, a lot of things have happened. The war broke out in Russia, or Russia attacked Ukraine, created a war. The U.S. did something which I perceive to be very stupid, which is it seized $600 billion of Russian currency reserves, and that sent the message to every other country in the world that, hey, if the U.S. doesn't like what you're doing, they can grab your money. Then that kind of started us on what I view as the next round of currency debasement. Although, to be fair, Jerome Powell has tried to mimic Paul Volcker with this very, very rapid rate cut or rate increase series that he's gone through in 2022, which burst, in my opinion, the everything bubble. And we're now seeing the everything bubble slowly but surely deflate. And the Silicon Valley Bank is just a very large picture, or signpost in that deflation. Right after Silicon Valley failed, Credit Suisse failed as well. So I have long said that in a system that's based on credit growth and increasing the money supply, you cannot stop, because if you do, the alternative is a collapse of the inflated assets, something that looks like the Depression. And I think the Fed is gambling here that they can contain inflation with these rate increases and that they won't have the collapse. And I think they're going to lose that gamble. I don't think there's any chance that it works for them.
So checking out the CPI chart, we can see, because of all the money printing the U.S. government did, we've had runaway inflation since around November of 2020. Inflation has continued to go up and up and up. It looks like we peaked somewhere around here in June of 2022, but inflation is still going higher. It's not at the same rapid pace it was at over 2021 and early 2022. We've slowed down again, but it's still going up pretty fast. So it will be interesting to see how inflation plays out here over the next year. Is it going to slow down, or we can continue to see runaway inflation? That's really going to tell where the market's going to be going in the future. And then he also talked about it being like the Great Depression. So checking out the S&P 500 during the Great Depression, you can see the S&P was at around $31. It peaked in September of 1929 at $31, and 3 years later, it dropped 90%. So if we see something like that for the S&P over the next 3 years, we'll be seeing some historic losses. The S&P will have a long way to go down, potentially going all the way down to around $500. I personally don't think that's going to happen. If we see anything like the Great Depression, we could see levels like that. So something to think about there.
So you've touched on something that's a real bugaboo for me. I hate it when gold guys hammer Bitcoin. I hate it when Bitcoin guys like Peter Schiff hammer gold. I mean, the way I see it is they're both forms of sound money, and it's pretty clear and obvious to me why they are. I mean, gold is a form of sound money because it has been for 5,000 years. It's widely and broadly accepted. You can go to any country in the world, change your gold for the local currency. And by the way, it's a limited resource that you can only pull out of the ground at a certain rate. And therefore, it is the oldest and most stable form of sound money. And I love gold. I'll always hold gold. My fund was all gold oriented until Bitcoin came along. And initially, I was quite skeptical of Bitcoin as well. I thought you couldn't really have a digital form of currency on a computer. And we all know that computers are prone to crashing and failing. And so I thought, well, that's not going to work. But over time, as I studied it more deeply, I became more and more convinced that what these people created, and I don't think Satoshi is one person, I think it was a committee, what these people created with Bitcoin is a system that actually truly does provide immutable digital scarcity, which to me is actually a really, really big invention. The fact that you cannot make more than 21 million Bitcoin, it just can't exist. The network and the 30,000 nodes and all the miners that are mining it are all set up to defend that. And as a result of that, I believe Bitcoin is effectively becoming a form of digital gold as a result of its adoption. And so I say there are really two kinds of sound money in the world: analog sound money, that's gold, and digital sound money, and that's Bitcoin, or the emerging digital sound money, Bitcoin. And there's some people who would argue it hasn't gone far enough to prove its worth. And admittedly, it's only 14 years old. But if you look at its performance in terms of price appreciation and its Sharpe ratio, which measures risk, in spite of its greatly volatile nature, it's really been a pretty good investment. And I think that's going to continue because the trends that drove it this far, they're not really reversing, right? Take Bitcoin. Bitcoin didn't exist 15 years ago. We have now got an entire young population of 30-year-olds that are Austrian economists because they read Saifedean's book, The Bitcoin Standard, right? And they're pissed off, and they know that they're not going to get any Social Security. And they know that the boomers have screwed them. And they know that they can't afford a house because there's too much inflation. And they're aware of just how screwed up this system is. And so they are now fighting to get rid of, the broken monetary system, the broken politicians, the corruption, all of it. And that's going to grow. That's going to grow, Michelle. And so, and there's some boomers like me and others who are doing the same. And anyone who's buying gold or anyone who's buying Bitcoin knows the monetary system is broken, and they're voting with their feet. And so all we need to do is get more of us to vote with our feet. And these people, it's going to collapse. Their system is going to collapse because without us, if we don't participate in it, if we save in gold and we save in Bitcoin and we don't buy all the bullshit that they're selling, eventually they won't have any funding. And by the way, we'll have all the marbles. I mean, gold at $10,000 an ounce, Bitcoin at $1 million a coin, and it's going to, who's rich is going to be a lot different than who's rich right now, right?